Well, the words of encouragement or advice are, that sometimes our best ideas come from these children who are supposed to be stupid, or are judged that because they don't have that X over Y kind of thought process that the schools favor. The greatest example of that ever, of course, was Albert Einstein, who we all know now was a full-on dyslexic, couldn't find his own house, and he had to paint his door red because he had such directional problems he could never get home. So he would drive up and down the streets in the area where he thought he lived and look for the red door. He was thrown out of the German school system, taught to read by his uncle. They told his uncle that he should go to a trade school. And that was Albert Einstein. And I often love to tell how he came up with the theory of relativity, because it is so simple, and it is so absolutely right brain, such a right brain thing, and which is the creative side of your brain. And here's how he came up with the theory of relativity. He was on a train in Germany, and he was going to his job, and there was a clock tower that was sitting right out here, and every day everybody on the train would see the time on the clock tower, and they would look at the clock to see whether they were going to be late to work. And Einstein didn't look at the clock to see whether he was late to work. He went into one of these kind of drifting, abstract thought modes that people like me and other dyslexics are very comfortable doing. And he said, they knew at the time that vision traveled at the speed of light toward you. So he posited the idea. He said, I wonder if the speed of the train at 60 miles an hour moving toward the clock, because it's closing the distance, is altering the time on the dial as it's coming toward me. And that's the relationship between time and motion. The theory of relativity changed the world. How simple. But it's very abstract. People have been looking at clocks like that moving toward them for years, and nobody came up with that abstract thought. So those are the gifts. The same is true of Edison, who was also dyslexic. They know that from going back into his journals. Yet he was the guy that said, I wonder if that electricity that's up there in the sky, if I can fly a kite and put a key on it, and if I can get it down here and use it. I wonder what it is. I wonder how it, it's all that abstract thinking that gives these, gifts basically to mankind, but which is often beaten out of children, in the early stages of their academic career. So that's why it's so important for parents to realize that this is not an IQ problem. There certainly are children who are have IQ difficulty, and they can't. It's very often people like that are lumped in with dyslexics because now dyslexia tends to have, not as big a stigma attached to it. So, but it really is a very specific condition, and it needs to be addressed specifically. But once you know your child is dyslexic, you don't have an IQ problem, but you might have a self-image problem if you don't really, really stay on it. And that's the best advice that I can give to children. Football saved me, there were other things, I was very good with people. I was always very good with people. I can't, I have 4 children, and they were always concerned about, am I in the in-group? People like me as my, and as you go through school, I can still remember one of my daughters getting the silent treatment from all the girls in her class for a week. Oh, devastated her. Oh, she was in tears every night, and then, I thought back on my high school career, and with all the trouble I had academically, I can't remember one day where I didn't think that people liked me. I can't remember one day where I felt that feeling of, I'm not popular. People don't care about me. I always knew I had friends. I always knew my friends. I just never had that monkey on my back. So you get some gifts, and other gifts you don't get. And I think nobody gets it all. Except Brad Pitt maybe. Nobody gets it all. So you have to like work with what you've got and try and make sure that children don't give up on themselves. Well, yeah, you have to be proactive. I mean, as a parent, if you realize your child has this situation, you can't just sit back and say, well, it'll work itself out, because it won't. So what you have to do is you have to get in business with the school. You have to, I know tutoring is expensive, and some families in lower economic groups won't be able to choose that as a solution. But that certainly is a solution for people who can afford it. With my son, who is severely ADD and dyslexic, who is now out of college, for him it was, tutors all the time, and that got him through high school and got him through college. He didn't tutor in college, but by then he developed some study techniques and all of that. But you have to stay active with it. You have to talk to the teachers. You've got to try and figure out how to deal with this situation. And then you have to make sure that children understand that not getting good grades is not necessarily the end all in life. And I said to my kids constantly, I pointed to myself, I had myself as a great example, flunking all these grades in high school, graduating from college with a 2.0. I've won the most prominent alumni award from every school that threw me out. A great accomplishment. So it just doesn't matter. Lots of times the people who were the valedictorians in my high school classes, don't have careers anywhere near as exciting or interesting as mine. So you just have to keep making sure your kid doesn't give up. And then once you get out of school, once that problem of spelling and math, math is just as big a problem, because if you're transposing letters, you're transposing numbers. So you're writing down the wrong numbers just as you're transcribing the problem out of the book onto the page that you're going to do the math problem on. You make a transposition problem, and from that point on, you are doomed to fail. So it's just as bad. So you have to stay proactive.